So what will business voices be telling the review? Well, we've got a couple of them to talk to us now. Tim Martin founded the Wetherspoons pub chain, and Richard Tice is a property developer and chief executive of Quidnet Capital Partners. Interesting, Tim Martin, the fact that when Amber Rudd's been asked about this, she didn't mention the government's target of getting immigration down to tens of thousands. Is this one of these ways, do you think, of possibly kicking it all into the long grass?
It's very difficult for me to say, really. I mean, I never thought that 100,000 was a sensible policy. I think it's 1/6 of 1%, according to my mental maths, of the population when we've got a very low birth rate anyway. So I think it was dreamt up by David Cameron after a few pints and doesn't mean too much. I think the key thing for immigration is that it's controlled by the UK government, and the debate that you're having now is a live one. It's a very good one. It's one that couldn't take place within the EU because it was controlled by people. Immigration was controlled by people we hadn't elected, and that's the nub of the issue.
Okay, so dreamt up after a few pints. I'm not sure there's evidence for that, but I suppose you do own a pub chain, so we'll let you get away with that. Richard Tice, what do you think about this target?
Well, it's not often I agree with Yvette Cooper, your previous commentator, but I mean, she's quite right. This committee and this commission should be reporting by this Christmas, not by next September. You know, it's completely unacceptable.
Because I suppose by next September it's just 6 months before it's due to be implemented.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm co-chair of the main Brexit campaign group now that's out there, Leave Means Leave. We produced a report that was written by Stephen Wolfe about 3 months ago, putting some real meat behind this with some detailed proposals. It's not difficult, and the government needs to rapidly accelerate this. And the point about this is it's not a permanent decision. You can evolve your immigration policy, but contrary to what Tim has just said, you know, I mean, net immigration in the UK in the 1990s was 62,500 people. Businesses worked well. The public sector worked well, and we had real wage growth.
So, Tim Martin, this is an achievable target then?
Well, I think that it's very difficult to put precise targets on it. The way I look at it is to consider the big picture. When you look at successful economies over the decades, Australia, New Zealand, North America, even small countries like Singapore, they've had gradually rising populations. So it is very difficult to put a number on it. I agree with Richard and the views of his organisation that you shouldn't have people in Brussels allowing whole countries to enter European countries with no democratic control. That's the key thing. But you could talk forever as to exactly what the figure is. It probably changes from year to year. It changes from decade to decade. And it depends on a lot of circumstances which themselves change, economic circumstances.
And Richard Tyson, a number of business people would agree with that and say it should be according to the needs of the economy rather
Correct.
than a target set by politicians.
And that's why Tim's quite right. It can evolve. You can evolve your target based on the growth of the economy. Every 2 or 3 years, you can change the policy. It's not set in stone. And that's why it doesn't need a huge consultation period. It frankly needs some leaders to make some decisions so that businesses know what they're faced with. And also then businesses can know they've got to actually focus on training UK staff from UK schools and colleges rather than bring in cheap overseas labour that's led to wage suppression.
But do you think that the target, the first target or the target that is there at the moment, that should stay in place for the time being?
Absolutely, because we know that's achievable. We know it works from the experience in the 1990s, when frankly we had better conditions for low-paid workers than we currently have.
And Tim Martin, wouldn't that be an incentive for businesses to train British people to do some of these jobs?
Well, I think businesses should have that incentive anyway, and we certainly do. I'm hesitant about saying the 1990s was this nirvana with Oasis and various other bands around who might not get on so well today. So I think things change. We need a reasonable level of immigration. It's nothing we should be too frightened of, but I have sympathy with people who are worried because it has got out of control, really, under the auspices of the EU.
Now, you're both people who supported Leave, as we've been hearing. Richard Tice, what do you think about the way that the Brexit process is being handled?
Well, the Prime Minister back in January did so well with her Lancaster House speech. The problem now is that it seems to be drifting, and you've got a dispute going on in Cabinet with Philip Hammond still trying to undermine the negotiating leverage of our chief negotiator, David Davis. He's talking about remaining in the single market and the customs union. And all these things are not helping us give confidence and give strength to our position. And we business people know that at the end of the day, no deal is always better than a bad deal. And we have to be prepared to walk away, and we have to accelerate the process.
Finally, Tim Martin.
I agree. No deal's better than a bad deal. And we mustn't tie the hands of David Davis by insisting upon this or upon that. He's got to have flexibility.
OK, Tim Martin, Richard Tice, thank you.